Welcome to this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have with us Brent Giannotta. He is a former CIA analyst, mental health professional, award-winning journalist. We'll learn from him about how threats evolve, how decisions are made, and what it all means for our safety and freedoms. Welcome to the show, Brent.
Thank you, AJ. It's great to be with you.
You are welcome. Welcome to the show. Welcome to India in this online form, Brent. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from, will learn a lot from what we are going to talk right now. We'll talk about how you do things inside the CIA, a lot of things beyond the headlines, and much more. But before that, let's understand a bit about your journey, your story, your background, so that people know who they are listening to.
Okay. Well, I was born and raised in Los Angeles, California, and I'm 44 years old now. That means when 9/11 happened, I was in the middle of my university education. And so I was woken up in the morning. It was about 9 a.m. And I came downstairs and I sat on the couch with my friends from college who I was living with. And we watched the towers come down just in shock. And everybody to my right was a business major, and everyone to my left was a film major. Those are the big majors at the college I went to. I was the only one that was studying international relations at the time. And they put the picture of Osama bin Laden on the TV, and they said, "This is who we think did this attack." And everybody looked at me, and they said, "Well, who is that guy?" And I said, "I have no idea." I felt like I let them down in their moment of need when they needed answers the most. And so just my brain just clicked, and I decided this is something I want to sort of do for the rest of my life. This feels extremely important. It feels like it's going to change the world. And like, I don't know where it came from or why it happened at all. So I pretty much immediately started taking Arabic language. I applied to a school in Beirut, Lebanon. I was there for a summer learning the language. Then I got a scholarship to get a graduate degree in Middle East Studies at the American University in Cairo. And then I worked for 2 years in Washington, D.C. at Human Rights Watch. So I was editing reports and press releases on people trapped in jail in Syria, Saudi Arabia, Iran, prisoners, like political prisoners. So I got to learn just sort of like the seedy, really rough side of Middle East politics. And then in 2010, I got an acceptance letter from the CIA, and I was hired as a counterterrorism analyst. And so I started it was the Iraq department at the time, but for 1 year, I went into a classroom to get my Arabic from medium to advanced. While I was in that classroom, the Arab Spring started and the Syrian civil war started. So now I come out of training, and now I'm in the Syria department. My department had changed names because Syria was where ISIS was and where this huge fight was. And 80,000 people were leaving their homes to go join ISIS, to go fight in Syria, fight against the Assad regime, blow things up, kill people, and maybe even die. And so my job was to explain to the government, why would somebody leave a beautiful city like Los Angeles or London or Paris or Berlin and travel to a dusty, impoverished war zone to fight for a terrorist organization and potentially die? This kind of decision it doesn't seem normal. It seems very wild to most people. And so it would help the Obama administration to know just kind of wave tops, like why would somebody make this decision and how we could maybe influence people to not make the decision as often. And so I dove into just reams and reams of psychological information and reports and analyses from all sorts of government agencies. And thankfully, there was a lot in the U.S. government. There's a lot of resources for me to peruse. And so I popped out with a report, a very long report, and I won a couple awards for it. I resigned in 2015, and then I decided I wanted to be a journalist because I really, really loved the research and writing part, but I didn't want to write for such a small government audience. And also, we weren't really winning the war in Syria. The administration tried a few things to end the bloodshed, but we just couldn't. It was just too much of a quagmire. And it was in a part of the world that we just didn't know very well. I was one of the only people in my huge office that spoke Arabic or read it at all. We didn't have the regional knowledge that we really, really needed at the time. So it was frustrating. It's frustrating for me and for all my teammates to be working so hard nights and weekends, and we just couldn't stop this just horrific thing from happening to this poor country. So I moved to New York, and I worked in journalism for a little bit, nothing really notable. But then I got on with a couple public relations firms where I ghost wrote op-eds for politicians and people in the State Department and the military who had some sort of idea or strong opinion they wanted to get out in the media. And then while I was there in New York, Donald Trump had become president, and I'd been reading all these things that digital media and specifically social media had changed the way that information was hitting all of us as consumers and as citizens. And I'd also read from experts that it was polarizing my country, and it was potentially like a large source of the explanation of why someone like Donald Trump could be elected president of the United States. And so that realization was a lot like 9/11 in that it felt like something huge that was changing not only my country, it was probably changing the world, and I just didn't understand enough about it. So I started doing a lot more around that in public relations. I moved back to Los Angeles during COVID, and I started my own company, ghostwriting my own op-eds. I wrote a couple op-eds under my own name. One in the LA Times was right after January 6th, the attack on the Capitol. And my op-ed basically said that these people who destroyed the Capitol building in the capital of my country, that they were radicalized in the exact same way that my ISIS targets were radicalized online, YouTube, fake news, in chat groups where everyone is consuming the exact same news and thinking the exact same way. And so I could also see that there was a huge mental health component to this terrible tragedy. And so I changed careers again, and I went and got a mental health certification, and I started working for this psychiatric mobile response team. So basically, if anyone in Los Angeles County called this hotline and someone was having a psychological emergency, they were in psychosis, mania, they were yelling at their neighbors, they stopped eating, they were trying to drink themselves to death, just like something terrible, I would hop into a van with a psychologist, and we would go there and we would try to stabilize the situation, and we would evaluate this person. And if they needed to go to the hospital, I would call the ambulance, I would reserve the bed, and we'd try to get them to a psychiatric hospital. And so with all of these experiences I've had, I've been very, very lucky in my life. Now we're in Trump 2.0, and I have done the thing where I write for newspapers, and I write for other people, and I write for the government. I've worked in nonprofits, I've worked in the private sector, and now it feels like I want to try to do my own thing, be an independent sort of media voice. And that's what I moved to Las Vegas to do, where I'm currently living.
Absolutely, Brent. So you have done almost everything that you wanted to. Now, what is it that you are wanting to do now? What is it that you want to achieve? And why do you do that?
Yeah, thank you for asking. I get to talk about myself a little more. So, a lot of people in the media, they think that they've got really good ideas that need to be out there and everybody needs to hear them and read them. And I'm no exception. I love reading. I love talking to people like you, smart people who are paying attention to see, like, how am I seeing things? How are other people seeing things? Why is there that difference? Is it because of where we came from? Is it because of our upbringing, or who knows? Like, these things fascinate me. I'm not good at everything. A couple of things I'm good at. I'm really good at remembering things that I read, and I'm really good at sort of like piecing puzzle pieces together in my brain about phenomena. That served me really well in the CIA, and I feel like it serves me well in my writing. So I have some theses in my head about what evolutionary psychology says about how early humans, life during our prehistoric times, programmed a lot of the neurochemicals in our head that are still activated right now. That helps to explain why we have things like high conflict, where when we disagree with somebody on like a moral issue or a political issue, we feel like a heat. At least I do. There's like a heat in the back of my neck, and I can feel this like tension rising in my thorax. And I really dislike this person. I want to either separate from them or I want to go at them. There's no in between. And it's not a civilized response. And I like to think I'm a civilized person living in a civilized society. So the key to that, I believe, rests in science that we have now, in neurochemistry, in evolutionary psychology, and in modern psychology and political science. What I want to do with my writing is piece those 3 or 4 things together into a couple theses that help explain, like, how did we get here? Like, we're in such, especially in the United States, we're in such a rough place. A lot of people don't trust each other. A lot of family dinners are ruined by politics. People don't want to hang out with their uncles or their grandparents. It's rough. It just feels so much rougher than it was a decade or 2 ago. I believe strongly there is a way we can fix this through a small handful of political, like, policy changes. We're not going to get those changes under President Donald Trump, because anyone who watches them for 2 minutes can see that he loves the conflict. He loves being the colonel of an army that is fighting against the other half of America, the other 30% of America that doesn't like him. He doesn't want to quell those animosities. He sparks it every hour when he tweets something or posts something on Truth Social. He's clearly addicted to this. I want this to go away because there are people in my family that I want to talk to again. There are friends that I want to talk to again. And I want the temperature, as they say, to come down in my country, and we get back to sort of a more empathetic and compassionate mode of politics. So those are the things that are inspiring and motivating my writing on my Substack newsletter right now.
Absolutely, Brent. See, you are a wise person. You have seen things on the ground. You know about human psychology. What do you think, humans want? What do you think ISIS fighters wanted? What is it that Mr. Trump wants? What is it that common person wants? Do you think we look at it only differently and everybody wants what they want? How do we differentiate whether they are right, they are wrong? We can look at it from the way we want to, because we want to create that image, we want to see it that way. But everybody fights almost like it's about themselves. Then where is the difference? As a person who has seen through, and it can, for a person who is working deeply in a setup like CIA, it can create questions, about the moral dilemma. Sometimes you think you are doing some good work, but the higher ups, you will find that their decision making is based on something much more perhaps political. I want to understand a bit about human psychology. You said you wanted to understand about ISIS fighters, why people were leaving their positions in strong places, good places, moving to those rough places. What about politicians? What is it that they want? Is it only about power, or is it they are also working for some lobby there? What about individuals? Do they also want the same sort of conflict that some politicians may want to create? Help us understand from that perspective the way you want to, Brent.
Such a great question, AJ. You're very good at this. Well, I should caveat by saying that I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist. I've only worked in mental health for a short time and been obsessed with it, fascinated by it for a number of years. But what I can say is that in terms of these foreign fighters, these usually young 21, 24, 29-year-old Muslim men who would leave places like France and Germany and Belgium for Syria, what they want is the same that everybody else wants, which is to be loved and respected by the people around them and the people that they interact with. And so some of these individuals, they had very rough childhoods. They had very unideal parents. Now, this isn't exclusive to terrorists. This like everybody knows a number of people who had a rough childhood because they had an unideal parent. But what that does is it creates a neurochemical cocktail in the brain that pushes not only that child, but as they become an adult, toward certain types of pathological behaviors to try to grab and seize that love and respect from the people around them. Now, some people will be highly, highly anxious, and they will overwork themselves to try to impress their boss or impress their colleagues. Some people will be angry, just have an angry personality to try to scare fear into people to get that respect that they crave so much. Some people will descend into depression. And my theory is that depression is an evolutionary tool where our early ancestors, when they would go into their hut or leave, like move away from their tribe mates and curl up into a ball, that the other tribe mates would wonder, where are they? Then they would go looking for them and find them, console them, and bring them back. So it was almost like a turtling exercise to try to regain this love, this feeling of love and compassion from the people around them. Now, some people are born with certain behavioral conditions and neurochemical conditions. So some people are much more prone to anxiety, high anxiety. Some people are prone to depression. Some people are prone to bouts of anger and screaming, yelling. And people who join ISIS generally are people who are prone to anger. I wrote about this in my Los Angeles Times op-ed. That also goes for the people who smashed windows and defaced the United States Capitol. There's a subset of people who, when their anxiety gets high enough, their response is anger. I'm not one of those people. I almost never get angry. And if I do, you probably don't know it. It's how I'm wired. We're all wired a little bit differently. Okay. So we've got one's upbringing. We've got a need for love and compassion and respect from the people around us. And everyone's got a certain type of what I call an anxiety response. So anger, sadness, crying, turtling up. There's a whole array of these things. And so the key is to use compassion. So when you encounter one of these people who maybe you're having a political disagreement with, is to give them compassion. That's the only thing that has a chance of quelling whatever's going on with them. Now, you mentioned the trying to grab power. Some people that we see in the US government, that's clearly all they're after. They are violating their own stated principles and beliefs because of what Trump wants them to do. So it's not about their principles or their ideologies. It's about giving Trump what he wants so that they can have the power that he has, or they can share in that power. So that to me is just grasping for a tribe that is respected. And that kind of fear can feel like love to people whose anxiety is high enough. So one thing I remember you mentioned was who's right and who's wrong. Well, there is a old Persian poet named Rumi, and he has a phrase that says, out beyond the ideas of rightness and wrongness, there is a field. I will meet you there. To me, that means what is right and what is wrong in our brains does not matter when it comes to relating to one another. If you think something very different than me, well, you're a different person than me. You grew up on the other side of the world. We're different ages. We worked in different industries. Of course, we're not going to see things eye to eye. That doesn't mean that we should be slaves to the high conflict I mentioned earlier on, where I feel like you need to be an enemy. I need to get away from you. I can't be in your presence. I can't be in your tribe. There's a way to be civilized enough to counteract that. And the key, I think, is understanding the psychology behind it and really infusing compassion and empathy into every moment of our lives.
Absolutely. So, Brent, I want to understand in terms of, you see, In CIA, how do you then, knowing so much about human psychology, about what people fight for, in CIA, what guides you as to who is right and who is wrong? Whether you will be fighting for the country, or is it about some political mission? And also, now that you are out as a journalist, how has your thinking changed from intelligence person to being a journalist, now looking at the world differently? Are you looking at the world differently than you were looking at, as a CIA? And the same things perhaps you would look at different. Help us understand from that point of view as an individual.
I do look at the world differently. From my time in the CIA, which was about 5.5 years, I got to see the inside of how countries operate. So one component of that is the partners that I worked with. So I did a lot of traveling when I was there. I happened to be working on foreign fighters to ISIS and ISIS external operations. Now, in 2012, when I finished analyst school, this wasn't a big thing. ISIS was fighting against the Assad regime. The fight was inside Syria, a little bit in Iraq, but external operations and external attacks was not a thing that anyone thought would happen. But I was writing reports on it anyway. Nobody cared. In 2014, there was a news brief that said someone had been shot to death outside of a Jewish museum in Brussels, Belgium. And the guy who shot these 4 people, the French police chased him on a bus, and they boarded the bus in southern France. They pulled him off the bus, and they opened up his duffel bag, and they found an ISIS flag. And they found a tape recording of him pledging fealty to the ISIS group. Now, the question was, before me and my team, was this person sent by ISIS, or was he just a lone wolf just doing this because he liked ISIS? He liked what he saw on YouTube. Well, that debate raged for a whole year. And so attack after attack came after that. So there was an attack on a train. There was the Paris attack where 130 people were shot to death in one night on November 13th, 2015. There was the Marseille attack where that truck, zigzagged and ran over all these people. So it kept coming and coming and coming. And so my research that no one cared about in 2012, 3 years later, was the most important thing in all of national security. So I got to travel to, France and England and Turkey and Saudi Arabia and all these places. And I would brief our partners. And then they would brief me on what they were seeing. And so I got to see how they operated and how it was different than how the United States operated. That's one. Number two, I became a world expert in the country of Syria and the country of Iraq. I could name hundreds and hundreds of towns and cities. I knew the geography like the back of my hand. And I had to know their cultures and their history as well. And all of that experience, it made me really, really appreciate the United States Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, because in those documents are not perfect, nor is the way that we have executed them at all. But in those documents are a way for societies to coexist peacefully and for leaders to pass leadership from one leader to the next without violence and a war. And that's something that the human race hasn't spent much time utilizing. I'm a huge student of history. I'm sure you are too. And you just can't pick up a history book without just reading war after war after war after war. And the United States and other places have figured out ways to do this. And it's really, really, really valuable. And parts of keeping that legacy going is by maintaining democracy, which requires truth, like true information getting out to people so that citizens have the same kind of basic idea of what reality is, what's right and what's wrong. And we're seeing that slip away right now. There's an argument out there that truth doesn't really exist. And I believe half of that. I believe that there may not be objective truth. What's much more important than objective truth is information that you and I both agree is like probably cogent, and that you and I are going to live our lives assuming that that's just the way it is. The sun is going to rise in the east and set in the west, and things like that. So in a way, truth is subjective, but agreed upon between people who like need to coexist in society together without killing each other when we have a difference of opinion. So it's made me appreciate the ideals that my country was founded on. And it's those ideals that I've become much more ideological about. I think that the wisdom in those documents is something really worth saving. And there was a day, I'll never forget this. I had a personal crisis in the CIA where I'd probably been working too many hours in a row. And I thought, what if Osama bin Laden is right? I mean, he brings up valid points about terrible violations that the United States has perpetrated on tons of other countries. I mean, El Salvador, we overthrew President Iran. I mean, the list goes on. Vietnam, the list goes on and on and on. Really, really terrible things. Like, who am I to say that Osama bin Laden is wrong and that his vision for an Islamic caliphate in the world is not going to be the most compassionate and most sort of successful and most sort of the thing that brings like gratefulness to everyone's life. And I thought about that hard for weeks. And what I came down on eventually is that his idea doesn't allow people to pursue happiness on their own terms. And that's going to be a problem. The format of the United States, the way we would ideally run the society, is that everyone gets to pursue happiness in their own way under a certain set of rules where you don't get to hurt anybody else. And there needs to be tons and tons of policies and regulations that make everybody sort of as equal as possible in a bunch of different ways. That seems the best way to run a society. Those are the things that I kind of live by. And I'm open to being wrong, being convinced I'm wrong. But that's what's motivating me at this point.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Brent. One thing I want to understand is, that you talk about safety and freedom of the people. And in the world's largest democracy that you are in, do you think democracy is either, about to be held hostage or is already held hostage by the different complexes, military industrial complex, tech industrial complex, pharma industrial complex, education industrial complex? Do you think now people have the wherewithal to rescue it, or it's too late? What do you see as a citizen of that great country?
It's never too late, AJ. I can't ever lose hope, and you shouldn't either. No one should lose hope. Because, again, when you read history, there were terrible, awful, awful chapters. Let's take Germany. One of the most awful chapters anybody can think of in history happened less than a century ago. And now Germany is a beautiful, well-functioning place. There's always, always hope. So for the United States, in the United States, we have two major, major problems. My theory is that if we fix these two problems, hundreds and hundreds of other problems fix themselves. One is wealth concentration and corporate consolidation in our business sector. And number two is engagement algorithms in digital media. So you mentioned all the different complexes. Well, those complexes are run by usually very, very rich people who run tons and tons of things. And they are so large in their businesses and their conglomerates that smaller players can't compete. That competition is being pushed out. When a company gets too big and too strong, a couple things happen. One, they stop innovating. They divert a bunch of money and resources from innovation to stock buybacks and lobbying. And number two is they foist themselves into politics because they have the resources to do so. If you and I had a giant company worth $1 trillion, it would be in our best interest to lobby the government as hard as possible to get regulations dropped and get laws passed in our best interest. And the fact that that is the case right now is a horrific violation of American principles. Like I'm reading about how John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, like 250 years ago, they said if someone gets rich enough in non-government power, they will come for government power. That's exactly what we're seeing. This is not a surprise. This is something that my senators and my members of Congress should have seen coming, should have done something about decades ago, but they didn't. Number two, which is actually connected, is engagement algorithms in social media, where things that outrage us, that makes us angry at each other, and makes us think that there's this huge conspiracy going on behind the scenes by evil people. Those things, it turns out, they trigger human psychology more than other things, more than cat videos, more than nice stories about people helping each other cross the street. Those just don't get the clicks and the likes or the comments. And so that complex, that industrial complex of digital media has made people like Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk richer than anybody in human history. And now they're in the government. They're running my government. If these two things are regulated, which they can, people ask me like, well, how could you possibly regulate social media? Well, there's a lot of ways to do it. One, you could have an independent commission in the government examining the algorithms every 30 days to see if they're causing harm. Number two, you could get rid of Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act of 1995 that will allow someone whose child took their own life from something they read online, that family could then sue the platform for putting that information online. That will be a huge restriction on these tech platforms. So if we can regulate those two things, and I think that it's possible because of how belligerent Trump is right now, he's got 3 more years of this, 3.5 more years. A lot of people are going to be hurt. They're going to be harmed. And a lot of people are going to be exhausted with all of this by the time it's time to vote for a new president. And I think politics, like it often does, is going to swing violently to the other direction, dramatically. People are going to, I mean, we just saw in New York, there's a Democratic Socialist mayor of the city of New York. People say that it's maybe the fault of the Democratic Party. That could be true. It could also be that everyone's terrified of what Trump and his people are doing to the country. So in a weird, bizarre way, this Trump experiment, which is so harmful to so many people, it gives me a lot of hope for the future.
Absolutely. So you talk about, emerging domestic and international threats emerging in the shadow of the Trump administration. What do you mean by that?
So I believe Trump is the largest threat to American national security and global security since the Cuban Missile Crisis. Now, on September 11th, which was this very traumatizing day for Americans, it was the day that we lost our innocence and we realized we were not a fortress, that what we did affect the world around us. It made people angry and they could hurt us if they wanted to. That killed 3,000 people on that day. But a research study out of UCLA came out a year or two ago, and it surmised that if Donald Trump during his first term had not politicized the COVID pandemic and he had not made it uncool for his followers to wear a mask or get a vaccine, that could have saved 400,000 American lives. Now, that's orders of magnitude more deaths than Al-Qaeda, ISIS combined, Hezbollah, Hamas, throw any terrorist organization in there that you want, has ever inflicted on American citizens. That was Trump's fault. It came from his brain. It was his idea. That was him. He has the same disregard for national security and the security of every single citizen and human now, but it's even worse because now he's engaged our military in overseas operations. And if he gets sort of the thirst for power from how that feels, he might not stop at the nuclear sites in Iran. Another part of this is that people like me, counterterrorism analysts who are we were world experts in what we were researching. We were doing 9-10 hours a day, 5-6 days a week for years on one little lane in the road on what some terrorists were up to, where they were, who their families were, what they were planning to do, how they were planning to do it. People like me are gone. A lot of people like me left because they didn't want to send intelligence to this president. A lot of people left because they know that the administration isn't going to respect or value that work. Like, why would a CIA analyst work overtime to write a really precise and thorough report for an administration that doesn't care? They won't even read it. Trump famously doesn't read. He needs to have videos, like TikTok videos, for him to pay attention. He's selecting people that are not qualified to run national security. Tulsi Gabbard is not qualified. RFK is extremely not qualified. So these things aren't going to feel like threats today or tomorrow. But if I was a terrorist, I would think that there's been no better time to hit the United States, because all the guards are down. All the guards are down. All of our security decisions are being made through a political bent, how it's going to look in the media and how it's going to hurt their enemies, who are not foreigners. They're liberals and Democrats like me. So this is about to get very, very scary as time goes on.
Absolutely. Do you feel this way just because you worked on the Harris Watch campaign, Brent? Or is it because you feel it naturally that way?
I mean, thank you for mentioning that. I forgot that part of my biography.
And along with that, do you see a political career ahead for you now that you have the experience also?
Oh, thank you for even suggesting that. So I was on the Kamala Harris campaign. I got to see the campaign from the inside. I have a lot of criticisms of how it was run from the top and on the grassroots end where I was. I wrote a long post about it on my Substack. I don't see those problems being fixed, which doesn't surprise me, because we kind of have the same leadership in the Democratic Party as we did 6 months ago. So that's not very surprising. I think that Zohran Mamdani being elected mayor of New York City is a really powerful symbol that people want something a little more aggressive, economically and socially aggressive. We want things to change. We want them to change fast and dramatically. And all I want to do is help that positive change occur like as fast as possible. I'm tired of people being harmed by bad policies, and I'm tired of people feeling scared. I'm from Los Angeles. I mean, more than 50% of Los Angeles City is Latin. And so those people, and many of my best friends are from this community, and many are citizens and some are not. The ones who are not are very scared, not only for themselves, but their families. And the ones who are citizens, safely citizens with passports and social security numbers, I mean, they shouldn't feel safe either, because this administration has demonstrated that they're going to do this to citizens. If you don't look the right way, if you don't sound the right way, I mean, you're fair game. So I want people to stop being afraid. I want people to not feel threatened. I don't want the stock market to fly all over the place. I don't want the bond market to go crazy and for $8 trillion of capital to be destroyed in a matter of hours. And so however I can do that, that's what I want to do. If it's sitting at this laptop and writing for the rest of my life, I'll do that. If it's joining a campaign for the next president, the next Democratic president, whether it be Mayor Pete Buttigieg or Gretchen Whitmer or Gavin Newsom or AOC, I want to be on that campaign and I want to help them win, and then I want to join their administration. Or if the best way to do that is for me to run for office, join Congress or whatever office that is, then I'm going to do that. I'm about to be 45 in a couple weeks. I'm living in Nevada. It's a very fun swing state. There's a lot of dynamism here. I hope to be on a campaign for the midterm. So I have about 8-10 more months to do what I'm doing with you right now. And I'm going to take each day as it goes, and we'll see what happens.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All the best. And I personally feel that, yes, young people should get that chance. And that is where whatever ideology they've got, they will certainly be thinking on the right way. That's my personal belief. And that's what my personal thinking while talking to you, Brent, is that you must, you can certainly look at that. I'm not endorsing in any way. I mean, I don't know anything about it, but that's what I
don't have your endorsement
yet. So, in that sense, one last question I want to understand from you, Brent, is about the greatest challenges to global security in today's time. How do you see that part? What should people know about that they don't?
One thing that people should know, and this goes back to a reading of history, is that we're living in an incredibly peaceful time right now. And every time I crack open a book of history, I mean, it just smacks you in the face. It's really, really remarkable what happened in 1945 and 1946 with the establishment of the UN and the establishment of the rules-based international order, where we're going to have a place in New York City. Country is going to have a number of delegates. And if there's ever a problem, before anyone resorts to blows, we're going to talk it out. And we're going to negotiate and debate, and we're going to do diplomacy first before taking up arms against each other. So that's number one. Number two, the order is based very much on economics. So back in the day, hundreds of years ago, if I was the ruler of a country or a principality, I would get rich by invading yours next door and taking your things. And my people would, one, they'd feel safer. Two, they'd respect me more. And I'd be richer. I'd have a much better standard of living. So that incentivized nations to go to war with each other pretty much constantly. Now, leaders feel like the cost of going to war and invading their neighbors is too high. It's a simple cost-benefit analysis. Instead, they set up companies that then do trade. And so they don't have to invade to go get the riches that they want. Presidents in the developing world live very well. They're very, very rich. They skim off the top. They take, oil revenues. They don't share a lot with their people. And so why rock the boat? So that's another thing, is to value the rules-based order that we have and to really, really appreciate this amazing time of peace and to not throw that away and take it for granted. Like I feel like my president is. And number three is that personalities of leaders always overlap with their policies. So you're going to hear, if you talk to conservative voters here in my country, you're going to hear the same phrase said over and over and over again. They're going to say, I don't like Donald Trump's personality, but I like his policies. And I believe that is a complete fallacy, and it is a tragic misunderstanding of human psychology. If you examine Trump's personality, his policies come from the exact same brain, and they mimic his personality. And that's not just Trump. It's Biden, it's Obama. You go back, that's how leadership occurs. You cannot separate one's policy from one's personality. And this holds especially for how autocratic a leader is. So democracy is the thing that can improve policies even past what a leader's personality can enjoin. And it's crucial in my democracy, where we vote for presidents, in your democracy in India, where you also vote for presidents, that you need to examine this person's personality. Do they have a behavioral condition? How do they treat their family? How do they treat people who don't agree with them? By doing that, that's going to give you a sense for what kind of policies they're going to enact. And I think that is just as relevant to Narendra Modi as it is to Donald Trump. And citizens across the world need to also take that into consideration.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's much to learn about all this from you, Brent, and I'm sure a lot of people would want to connect with you, learn more from you, about you, also learn from your Substack that you are focusing on, I'm sure. What is the best way for them to do so?
Thank you so much, AJ. My Substack is called Sleeping Giant at Brent Giannotta. You can type either of those into the internet and it'll pop up. I'm trying to write once a week. It's hard. What I write, I try to do a lot of research. I want it to be right. I want it to be balanced. So I'm not just firing things off every couple of days. But I really, really enjoy it. And, the more subscribers I get, the better chance I have of getting a book deal, because I've shared a lot of my ideas with you today. I would love to write, a 200-page book about this. That would just make me so happy, and share it with the world. So onward. Let's see what I can do.
Wonderful. Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you, AJ. It's been so great to be with you. You're doing such a great job. I hope you keep it up.